Hi, and welcome to our 9th episode of The Biz Live. And I know that because we've got our nice posh ceramic mugs. A very, very belated Happy New Year, even, to our viewers who are now tuning in, if that's the correct parlance, on both LinkedIn, which is our primary platform. We've been accredited by LinkedIn in New York and India and elsewhere to stream live to the whole of the network, to a subset of our followers and connections, of course. But also, we're trying out streaming to both Facebook and YouTube. So we're trying out Facebook today as well. Hopefully there'll be some more comments chiming in. The principal way to connect with us today, if you're on LinkedIn, is to say hello in the chat. So my name is Jamie Breeze. You are watching season number 4, episode number 9 of The Biz Live, sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships. We've got a great show lined up for you, and welcome to the show. Okay, so I'm very pleased to say back for another year of The Biz Live is my colleague Sarah Brooks. Sarah has an impressive track record in so many different sectors, but particularly broadcast. So when we started the show and we started doing the planning back in August last year, it was a natural fit to ask her, being a current colleague on the Business Showcase Southwest, and then of course with Evo Networking, which this show is effectively run by. We've got a great show. As I said, we have a very special guest speaker, a serial entrepreneur, a hospitality and leisure expert, among so many other things, but we'll find out about that in a moment. Our guest, of course, is Michelle Micheal MBE, and this segues very nicely in today's theme, which is hospitality and tourism and the pandemic. So as I mentioned, we're sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships. Thank you very much indeed to Adam Rook and the team. They've sponsored all of season 4, and this is the 9th episode. So hello, Sarah Brooks.
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I know you're okay because we were chatting in the green room. We have a virtual green room because we're no longer in the studio at Origin Workspace in the city of Bristol in the United Kingdom. If you are tuning in from elsewhere, please do introduce yourself into the chat, won't you? Let us know where you're tuning in from. And please use the chat as well, guys and girls, to introduce yourself to each other, to network. You know, the core of the Biz Live is networking, of course. So, and by the way, if you want to take part in Evo Networking, which is a business networking and support community, I think it's become in the last year since the COVID crisis, then do go and visit our website. It's www.evo-networking.com, and you can also have a look at Eventbrite. Just search Evo Networking and there will be a group meeting near you very soon. So over to you, Sarah. Tell us about today's theme and also the talking point, please.
Well, I mean, looking at this area, this theme that we have today about hospitality and tourism, I mean, one doesn't want to be too gloomy about it. I mean, personally, I think we're well, aren't we? We're okay. But this episode of the Biz Live is really about an area that has had the most profoundest of impacts by COVID. And, you know, at no point in history have businesses in 200 countries across the globe all been paralyzed by the very same factor. You know, that's never, ever happened before. So, you know, we're living in extraordinary times. And, you know, the hospitality sector, travel and tourism has had, you know, just the most incredible impact on it. I mean, literally, it's been completely shut down by law in many, many countries, in most countries. So, you know, and in this country, you know, we've been banned from doing the things that we love doing, you know, meeting up with people, socializing, you know, going out for meals, meeting up in the pub. And so many people rely on us doing that for their livelihoods. So, you know, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But for sure, we will be able to get out there again at some point, won't we? So the question today, and what I'd like people to consider, is when we can, where will you be making a beeline for? What is the venue that you've missed out on most over the last 10 months? Restaurants, hotels, cinemas, theatres, bowling alleys, piers even. You know, maybe there's somewhere more exotic you had in mind. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing some sunshine at some point. So where will you be heading for when we get released.
So tell me, Sarah, which would be your first venue choice if you were to, when the lockdown ends? Where would you be giving? Give us your first and second.
Oh gosh. Well, I would love to go to. I'd love to go abroad. I'd love to go to Italy. That would be my destination of choice if I was to go a bit further afield. But closer to home, I just love going to the cinema. You know, I just love going to the cinema and watching a really good movie, you know, with the lights down and all that fantastic surround sound. I think that's what I've kind of missed, really. I've been pretty happy and contented at home. And my cooking skills have come on a treat as I pretend to be Hotel Sarah. But yeah, I think the cinema and, yeah, obviously going out and hanging out with friends. That's what I miss.
I'm looking forward to going back into the studio. Of course, I would say that, wouldn't I? But also, and I would say this, wouldn't I? But I really enjoy visits to Weston-super-Mare, and I've particularly enjoyed visiting probably once a quarter in fair weather. I go to Weston-super-Mare and visit the pier. And as if by magic, of course, our guest speaker today is not only an entrepreneur and, you know, she's done so many things, but we'll introduce her in a second. Michelle is, of course, the principal at the Weston Pier, which is a huge landmark in Great Britain. And if you've enjoyed a destination, it's certainly somewhere to go. I've been going there since it was, or since I was a little one, actually. Okay, so thank you very much indeed, Sarah Brooks. We will see you in a little while. For those of you who are still watching, thank you very much indeed for all the comments. There's a bunch of you now, so continue to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and very importantly, please do post questions for our speaker today. We're going to have a 10-minute section around about 12 o'clock, 5 minutes past 12 for you to ask questions. So keep those coming in, because Sarah is not only co-producing and co-hosting the Biz Live episode 9, sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships and all like that, and the team. Thank you very much indeed. It makes a difference, allows us to do the show, but also we'll be moderating the chat as well. And we're very, very pleased to say that it's worked very nicely since we started a few months ago. And our very first speaker was, of course, was the former head of the British Army and a director of several companies like Michelle. He's called General Sir Peter Ward, and he will be coming back along with some other guests later in this season and next. So without further ado, thank you very much, Sarah Brooks. Say goodbye. Please enjoy your moderating. Thank you. And we'll see you in a little bit. You are watching The Biz Live. This is Jamie Breeze. I'm your host, and we'll see you in about 5 seconds' time. So, as mentioned, our guest today is Michelle Micheal MBE. Now, I have got a little crib sheet here, but why use that? I know what she does. She's a friend, and she's also been a customer. I guess I've been a customer of hers as well. So, without further ado, please put your hands together virtually from wherever you are in the world, of course, on LinkedIn, Facebook now for the first time, and YouTube. Please welcome Michelle Micheal. Can we have a, if you can see the screen, there's some hearts and there's some hands giving hearts. Let's have a few of those, please, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see a few of those fly up in the air. Thank you very much indeed. I like that. So, Michelle, lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Morning, Jamie. How are you?
Wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. Thank you very much indeed. And getting through the lockdown, it seems to lend itself quite well doing this show from wherever. All you need really is a half-decent microphone, a camera, a few friends, a bit of time, and a laptop at the right clock speed. It's not overheating yet. It did do it one of the early episodes, and we always had to abandon it. So thank you so much for joining us. Look, for those of you who don't know, who aren't part of the Evo network, Michelle has... Well, I Googled her in the early days and I looked on Companies House. And I think it was like over 100 companies you are a director of or have been a director of. And I think, you know, you're currently a director of 13 companies actively, which is absolutely incredible. I don't know anyone who does so much while all the while contributing significantly to charities. But let's find out. Let's tell people a bit about you, because I'd like to look at your past, present and future, but particularly talk about the challenges that the us in, broadly speaking, in the events sector, hospitality, catering, food and beverage, all of that stuff encompasses hospitality, doesn't it? So can I ask you a little bit about your background? I mentioned 13 companies, charity work. I know you were a lawyer at one point. Take us back to the beginning. What was the epiphany what was your first sort of business moment? What was your first business experience?
Well, really, my parents had hotels in Weston-super-Mare, so we grew up in a business environment. So we had work as part of our everyday life. So for me, work is part of what I do. So I don't feel like I'm doing something that I don't want to do. I wake up every day and I like working. So I'm quite grateful for that environment, because it teaches you young, and you just sort of build work into your everyday life. So I think we left living in the hotel when I was 15, and then just about to go to college. So we kept going back in the holidays and working. So really, right the way from as long as I can remember, work ethic has been sort of drilled into me, and it's been difficult to get the work-life balance, because I continually work 24/7. So
it's one of those great.
yeah,
I don't know what the percentage of.
constantly on my phone.
I don't know what the percentage of people are in the UK who get out of bed every morning and go, I really enjoy my job. Amongst all the different sort of things that you've done, is there something which is the thing which you've enjoyed the most in terms of business? I know I'm jumping ahead a bit. Oh no, really? Oh gosh. Can you hear me now? Is that any better?
Yes, I can. Yes, hi.
I think there's a slight technical problem with Zoom today. In fact, Teleporky, I know there is, because we started 3.5 minutes late. There is a technical problem. Normally we're able to enlarge the screen, and there's been some audio blips. But, a small mea culpa. Let us know if you can still hear us in the comments. Would be grateful. Sarah Brooks, give me a thumbs up. I can see you in the green room. Can you hear us? That's great. There's a time delay of 20 seconds, which kind of throws things a little bit when there's something goes wrong. So going back to what I was saying, Michelle, I just wanted to we talked about your epiphany, your early experiences. I was saying that in business, I know that I get out of bed every morning, well, most mornings anyway, and I can't wait to get started with work. And I think sometimes I'd do it even if I wasn't paid, particularly the sort of networking and events. Out of all the things that let's say you've done, which I know there's so much, it's just mind-boggling. Is there one thing that you enjoy the most, where you go, yeah, I'll definitely do that, even if it wasn't paid, as long as that doesn't jeopardize your business model with your customers, of course?
I really think the Pier is just a fun place to work. You get to interact with lots of young people, you welcome families. It's a really lovely environment to work in. And I think even if I wasn't paid, I'd probably roll my sleeves up and go there and help. And, I'm really lucky, because I've got a wonderful office overlooking the water, and, my environment is just great there. And it just lends itself to great work. So that's probably the place that I would go.
It's got a great history and heritage, as you know, Weston. I think I remember about a year ago getting very excited and writing an epic Jamie email, which some friends have received in the past, about my favourite movie was, the final act, as we call it, was set principally in Weston-super-Mare. I mean, there's so much to it. It's not just part of the English Riviera. I still consider it as such, with so much history and heritage. But, the Pier was and the Winter Gardens, of course, was a central part of the movie, The Remains of a Day. And, and it won. I think I sent you a gift once, thanking you for your support and custom. And I think it was the book or the DVD. I tend to give that to people because it's my favourite book, but it's also my favourite movie. It's a Merchant Ivory film, and it won the Booker Prize as well, of course, in '89. So, anyone who's watching, I recommend to watch it. It's a rule book, and I've taken a lot from it since I watched it in probably my first year, actually just before I came to uni. It's a rule book, as the author said, on how to waste your life. I mean, it's an incredible book, and the film is devastating. And I think that I got a real sort of kick up the backside when I read it and saw the movie, and I thought, every day you really should be making the most out of everything. It's so precious, life. So many things can go wrong in life, and that's a bit bleak to say straight after Blue Monday, but it's true. And I think in business that's filtered through to me. So going back to the history of Weston, there was there was a point that your family acquired the pier. Tell us a bit about that, because I know there was some really heavy news which followed a few months later. So how did your family come into ownership of the pier?
So we just sold our garden centre, which was on junction 22 of the M5. So it was Sanders Garden Centres, and we were looking really for another garden centre site. We couldn't really find one, and the owners of the pier and we had common auditors, and they were trying to sell the pier offline, off the grid, and the accountants put us both in touch, and it was just one of those things, really. You know, when you're young and you grow up looking at the pier, and you know you could only go there when you had a special treat, when family came from outside of town, and you could take them up there, and you know we weren't allowed to go up just every weekend or every day or whatever. So looking at it and thinking, you know, we could own that. I mean, we probably didn't have a clue how to operate it at the time, or what we were going to do with it, or how we were going to renovate it, but it was just the excitement of kind of arriving and being able to buy an asset like that, grade 2 listed structure, and something that we'd driven past, walked past, and used all our lives, you know. So it was a great moment to be able to do that. Unfortunately, we completed on the 6th of February, and we conducted about 6 months worth of renovation, and at the end of July, overnight, it caught fire, and we had a bit of a terrible time. The building wasn't insured for the right amount of money. We had problems with the insurance company paying out, and we signed a contract to rebuild bigger, better, bolder, etc. 3 months before one of the biggest recessions ever to hit in 2009. So really 2008 was a really, really tough year for us.
I bet. I mean, that's a catastrophe, really, on every level imaginable. I mean, how do you bounce back from that? I think I shared with you previously, I was on the pier, I believe, that very morning, because I remember coming back and catching the news and seeing that, I think it was some live footage going off at the time, and the whole thing up in flames. It was absolutely astonishing. I'd been on it that very morning. I'd been with a friend. I remember it was a really hot day. I remember it being,
it was, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you, okay, this is a business show. Obviously, there's an emotional connection here as well on every level. How do you bounce back, excuse the parlance, from something like that? How do you dust yourself down? It was millions, wasn't it? It's a public figure, isn't it? It was millions lost. It
was. I mean, I think the single biggest takeaway from that was that there was no loss of life, and therefore the fire brigade, in tackling that, decided to let it burn rather than try and fight it, because there could have been a loss of life. So, you know, that was the right thing to do, looking back on it. Obviously at the time, you have to sit there and watch it burn, and that was pretty horrific. And my brother had left the night before on holiday. We did a bit of a tag team. I came back from holiday the day before. We did a handover, and then he left with his family and went over to Spain. So we had to get him back. And there was quickly a task force set up by the council, because there was debris on the ground. We had to protect some of the assets that had fallen. And really what you do is you have to get in go mode, because, you know, you've got to salvage what's left. You've got to mobilise your staff. You've got to get a plan in action. You know, you've got 150 staff standing on the beach lawns wondering what to do. And so you get your management team together and you press that green light, and you work solidly day in and day out, night in and night out, until you get something done. And one of the biggest issues for us as a family is that it burned on our watch. You know, we had a grade 2 listed structure that had been around since, 1904. Yes, it had a devastating fire in 1930, but since then it had been pretty much intact, and it burnt on our watch, and we needed to know why and we needed to know how, and we needed to reassure people that, this was the heart of the bay and it was coming back in some way, shape or form. So we had absolutely no qualms that we were going to rebuild it. We just didn't know how at the time. So, I think that when you're faced with a really catastrophic event like that, you have got to press the go button and go, because so many people, so many families rely on you. And, we had an outpouring really from people who had their memories there. They got married there, or they met there, or they worked together and then got married and got together. And it's just so many family moments that were shared with us, which was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So, we knew we had to do something and do it quick.
So you've been through a significant major crisis. I guess that is the best segue to talk about the current crisis. I want to end on some really positive notes, and I certainly want to invite everyone to come in and ask some questions as well. We'll be cutting to some questions. We'll bring them up on the screen. We'll talk a bit about in and around the question as well with Michelle. So do put some questions into the chat if you're on LinkedIn. So Michelle, we jumping forward to this time, round about this time last year. You, as far as I know, you're still an executive director of Visit Somerset. You're involved in, you lobby Parliament. You've received the MBE, I believe that was primarily for services to good causes and charity. You sit on, I know you sit on the board, as it were, or the committee for the Western Hospice Care. There's so much to this. All of this stuff has, I presume, has sort of been hit somewhat badly. Tell us about how the COVID crisis has impacted you and what sort of things you've put into place for all those who are watching from that sector to get through. And what's your kind of view on the future?
I think in the first lockdown, it was really a shock moment for the world, for us, for the country, for our region, for business, everything really. And I think that what we did is we quickly mothballed the pier. We closed when we were asked to close, and we, as a family, decided that what we would do is we would turn our attention to how we could help. And we asked our staff if they would volunteer to help, and we did a number of things. We colour washed our building blue. We put our banners up. We donated manpower to help make masks and face shields. We bought the raw materials through our charitable trust and donated them to the local schools so that they could the teachers could socially distance and make the face guards in their workshops, because the GPs and those clinicians that are going out into the community, they just did not have any PPE. So it was, how can we help, and let's do everything we can to help. So we did a lot of that, and we did a lot of support for our staff. We were in contact with them weekly. We gave them things to do and ideas to entertain their children, and ask them to volunteer. So there was a lot of things that we did. We unfortunately, as a family, lost 3 members of our family in the first 5 days of the first lockdown, and that was really, really tough for us as a family. And we decided that we would step out of the limelight. So we did no interviews. We didn't put any comms out. We just refused to do everything. We kept getting contacted by TV and radio to sort of talk about the pandemic, and there was just too much pain at the time. So we did what we could in the background, and just sort of battened down the hatches. And in an environment where you can't get together and you can't grieve together, so we knew 150% how people with losses were feeling. And we take COVID seriously as a family, and we absolutely adhere to all of the messages. We don't interpret them. We absolutely adhere to them, because we know about the devastating loss.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what I can say to that. I know you shared with me privately at the time that you'd lost family, but that's just beyond comprehension to lose 3 close family members in 5 days, and to have to manage all the while, you know, a substantial amount of businesses. What has been the... I'm going to bring Sarah into the room in one moment, and we're going to bring some questions in. So please do, if you've got some questions for Michelle, particularly around tourism and leisure and the COVID crisis, please do pop them into the chat, and we will ask in a few minutes' time. Michelle, what has been a few key things that you've done to keep yourself in a positive mental attitude? I know you quite well. I consider you a professional friend, and I know you're extremely resilient. What sort of advice could, because you're a leader in this field, you know, you're a global leader in this field, in this sector. What sort of advice could you offer to others who are in our sector, and also other businesses as well, about keeping up that resilience? And what do you think about the future?
I think, you know, we've all, since the first lockdown, had the opportunity to open, to give our staff the confidence that they can trade in a safe environment and welcome visitors in a safe way, and reassure them that we're taking all of the precautions. And that has given us a lot of joy and a lot of hope and a lot of confidence that things will get back to normal and we will be able to operate. It might not be at the capacity levels that we're used to, it might not be in the way that we know it, but we can still offer something, a great day out for a family in a safe environment, when we are allowed to do so. And I think the takeaway for all of us is, you know, it's not that it hasn't affected everyone, it's affected everyone in a particular way. Some people have been fortunate to have been positively affected, but I would say that the majority of businesses in my sector, in the event, hospitality, travel sector, have been affected negatively. And it's really hard to keep up the positivity, even if you're a positive person. But I think it's good to have a bad day and it's good to have a good day, because you can differentiate between the two. Yeah. Me personally, living in Weston-super-Mare, I appreciate so much the ability to go into the woods, the ability to walk on the seafront, the ability to get the fresh air, and to not be constrained, even for 1 or 1.5 hours a day, to not be constrained up the road from where I live, to enjoy that environment. And it makes you feel so much better if you can get out for some fresh air. You can think better, and it relaxes you. And I think that my personal mantra is, we will be back. It's just a question of when. And it doesn't matter how we're coming back, we're coming back. And I think that is the hope that everyone needs to say to themselves, that, you know, one way, shape or form, you're coming back. You're going to be doing something. You're going to be offering something. People will want your services, and you will be able to provide them to the best of your ability in as safe as environment as you can. And I think that that's the thing that keeps me and my team motivated. You know, what's next? What are we doing? I mean, silly or not, we have renovated the pier. We've made some improvements. We've redecorated some of our outlets. We've got some plans, you know, and they're all ticking along and bubbling along in the background, and we can't action them because we're not ready to open yet. But when we do, we will have our offer ready, and we are ready to go. So the team are positive, albeit mothballed, but they're ready to go.
Michelle, thank you. I think it's time we bring Sarah in. As a reminder, if you're joining us live at the moment on LinkedIn, Facebook or YouTube, we're trying out Facebook Live today as well. You're watching The Biz Live. My name is Jamie Breeze. I'm the co-host. Sarah Brooks is the co-host. You're watching Michelle Micheal MBE, a titan in tourism and leisure. And we'll see you again in a few moments' time. Hello there, Sarah Brooks.
Hello.
So have you got a few questions from all of those who are watching? And by the way, if you're watching, LinkedIn posts this automatically back onto its platform, and you can continue to sort of interact and make comments as well if you're watching after the live show. Okay, over to you, Sarah. Have you got a couple of questions for Michelle? We've got about 9 or 10 minutes, if that's all right, Michelle.
Yeah, we've got a few questions here for Michelle. How about we kick off with this first one, Michelle, from Charlotte Gazard, who asks, what is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self just starting your career?
Ooh, I think that the one piece of advice is network more. I think as a younger version of myself, I was a very shy individual, and if you put me in a room, I'd listen, I'd take a lot of information in, but I didn't interact. And I think the more you interact, the more you learn, and it's wonderful to surround yourself with people that know more than you about something, anything. You know, if you can learn every day, I think that would benefit people. So my younger self, get the confidence and network.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, you can survive, can't you, in lockdown? You can survive, you can eat, and you can kind of manage, but actually without talking to people and sort of riffing ideas and, you know, coming up with new things and their thoughts, throwing them into the mix, you do realise how important that is.
Absolutely.
Just to speak to different people today. And a question here from Adam Rook: what advice would you give to others in the industry to remain adaptable and dynamic with the ever-changing guidelines that you've had to deal with?
I think that's a tough one, because you can kind of set yourself up to go and you can be ready to press the green button and then the rules change. It's about speed of it. I sit on an education trust, and our executive principal there and his team are so versatile in the way that they adapt. You know, education changes by the moment, not even by the day. And he's got a great dynamic team, and they jump in and they say, right, you know, what's next? Okay, we've done that, we're ready to go. And they say, okay, but it's changed again. Okay, well, let's do it like this. So it's the speed at which you react, I think, to the challenges. You've got to be quick, you've got to be certain, and there is no shame or embarrassment in asking somebody that's already done the homework. You know, there might be bigger businesses that you collaborate with that have got somebody whose sole focus is just looking at the rules, or somebody that you've got in the council who has to interpret those rules and then put that guidance up on the local website. You know, we collaborate with our local council as well, and we chat to them quite a lot about what's going on the seafront and the activities that we've got planned for the future, and whether or not we think they're going ahead. So, you know, talking to people in your sector just gives you such a great insight. And even if you have one takeaway from each conversation and you put them all together, very quickly you can adapt and get those new things in place with ease.
So I think we've got time for a couple more questions. Then I've certainly got a question from Michelle, which has come up as a result of other people's questions. So go ahead. I see some questions there from Dean and Kieran et al.
Yeah, so Dean Ward asks on that subject then, what next for the peer? What have you got in mind to do next, given what you know now, the situation we're in now, the vaccine rollout? What do you envisage happening for the year ahead?
I think that the hospitality sector will come back in phases. I can't see everything open all at once, or singing or dancing. So I think we're going to be eased into hospitality, and attractions, if we go from history from last year, will probably be the last facet to open. So I see a rollout similar to the one that we had. I don't see us, even if the rules are more relaxed, I think that to start with, we'll go with what we knew, what we had, and the conditions that we were used to operating in. And then if those rules are relaxed and we can up our capacity numbers, then we will do so very slowly. but I would like to see a return of some safe events, some private events where people are able to gather as families and friends groups. Those milestones that people have lost in the last year where they couldn't get together. I see a big market there for people getting together to celebrate, you know, lots of birthday milestones, anniversary milestones, or just a great family get together. I see lots more of the private nature of events rather than the public nature of events.
Interesting, isn't it? Jamie, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, and thank you everyone for your questions so far. Michelle, I know that you've got other companies as well. So is it Abacare? There's AAA or AAA recruitment. I wanted to ask you about recruitment because I've got a number of customers who are recruiters. Part of me thinks, well, it must be an exploding market, you know, because everyone's kind of looking for jobs because they're, you know, they may be losing them or they're reconsidering what they're doing after furlough. Or has it sort of gone terribly quiet? Is there in the recruitment sector? I know we're going slightly off point, but how's things in the recruitment sector?
I think it depends on the sector. I think that there are lots of sectors where things are flourishing, but as you say, because there's an influx of people that have lost their jobs, then there's a lot more of the direct contact between employers and employees, so that they're putting things on job boards and getting those listings. I would say that from the employer's perspective, it's a much more arduous task because they'll probably be getting a lot more people per role available than they ordinarily would. So the sifting of those applicants and finding the suitable candidates is probably taking them a lot longer. My sectors, one is thriving and one isn't. So one element is busy and one is absolutely fallen off a cliff. And I think that quite a lot of recruitment companies have had to diversify to try and get into the, you know, construction, food production, food distribution sectors, and just the sort of transport and things like that. So, you know, it's an adaptable environment at the moment.
I know I had the great privilege a year or so ago to interview you at the stadium. We had a stadium event in a different business, and Sarah was involved in that. That was quite a thing. And I have to say, I was getting messages through on my earpiece with some sort of thing going on over there at the time, and it was I was really multitasking that day, and I still remained absolutely riveted. And of course, we'd had a sort of fireside chat a year or so earlier, Evo Networking, which I just always cite to people as being some of the most direct advice I've ever heard. And brilliant as well, I should add, just in case there's any doubt. I'm really, really keen in the last few minutes we've got just to sort of talk just a little bit about leadership, because I've quoted you, hopefully verbatim, a good few times at dinner parties and in business events. You know, the very direct, straightforward, straight up advice based on years of experience. And the fact that you were a commercial lawyer at one point as well. You know, that's what. Let's talk about leadership, just to wrap up, if that's okay. What advice would you give to people who are watching, who are either leaders or would-be leaders amongst us? I suspect in many cases after this crisis, a lot more people with the fluidity in the marketplace and careers are going to be considering themselves leaders of their own brand, leaders of their own destiny. There may not be a job for life, and many of those companies may have changed indefinitely. Who knows? So my question to you is, what advice would you give to would-be leaders amongst us? If there's just in business, you know, you're a leader of leaders in my experience.
I think the thing that I've learned is that I don't know everything, and you have to be a little bit humble when you're growing a business, and it's growing and growing, and you probably haven't had experience of how to run a big business or a bigger business than the one that you're in. And my advice really is, surround yourself with good people. I think you need one of everything. I refer to it always as a box of Quality Street. You have to have one of everything in order for your business to thrive and to survive. And I never see a business that doesn't surround itself with good people failing. You know, that you get the right people around the table, you get that dynamism, you get that energy going. You push the boundaries, and you just knuckle down and work hard. You keep your eye firmly on the numbers, because the numbers don't lie, and you know, you get a good business. So my advice would be to surround yourself with good people and communicate. You know, decisions need to be made. Don't dilly-dally, you know, it's either going to be right or wrong. And half the time it's wrong and half the time it's right. But you dust yourself off, you learn, you don't make the same mistake again, and then you try something different. So, you know, I think don't dilly-dally about things. Make the decision, take the initiative, do the job. And if it fails, it won't be for want of trying. You know, you put your things together, it didn't work, learn from it and move forward. And I think that entrepreneurs have had just as many failures as they have successes. And I don't know anybody that I've ever spoken to who's an entrepreneur who hasn't.
It's golden advice, Michelle. I learn something new every time I speak to you. It's a real privilege to interview you again in this kind of very, very different climate, you know, than when we last spoke, right knee deep in a very large event. In fact, there were probably 4,000 to 5,000 people at that event that very day, and hundreds of them gathered to come and hear you speak. So, Sarah, do you have a particular question? We've got just a couple of minutes left, and I know that you and I have worked together a lot in the events sector. I wanted to end on a positive note, and I'd like to remind people that, you know, in the UK, certainly if you're watching here, the numbers get better in terms of the amount of vaccinations. The venues are opening up all over the place. The death rate is impossibly high still, which is almost unbearable. But have a think, Sarah, if you've got a final question. But certainly, Michelle, you know, you've got your finger on the pulse in so many different ways. You've been through a catastrophe in your family experience with the COVID. When do you think, realistically, that the venues and hospitality will be open for business in a way that is both safe, of course, but when things will start to have some semblance of normality back here in the UK? My feeling, I sort of think maybe the early summer, not February, March time. But what do you think? What's your sort of best guess based on somebody who's right in there at the moment?
I think before this last week of numbers, I had hoped for an Easter reopen. I would say probably more likely to be something like Whitsun, end of May, that sort of time, beginning of June. I would love it to be sooner, but we will be driven by the guidance and you know, safety first. You know, we have to get these numbers down. We have to get them under control. And then there'll be plenty of time for everybody to have some fun and get together with their family and friends. And I think that's the real the real sad thing for people is just the lack of communication and the ability to be with their family and friends. And I think that does affect you, and that does give you those down days where you're feeling you know, out of sorts, and everyone gets them. I get them, you know, but it's we have to have hope. And you know, I think early summer, like you say, end of May, Whitsun time would be great if hospitality could reopen.
Sarah, back over to you for a closing comment, if I may.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, you mentioned Ashton Gate Stadium, obviously a place that we know and love, and we've worked in for many years. And they've obviously been able to pivot. You know, they're now a regional centre for the vaccine rollout. So that is a good thing. I mean, there are sort of chinks of light there. But I did want to just go back to what people said was what they were looking forward to doing, because I think, you know, that makes us all think of nice things, doesn't it? So Yasmin, she wants to go out for a pub lunch. Lydia says she's looking forward to booking a West End show. Adam says surfing on the beach with his kids in Devon. Kurt wants to enjoy a meal with friends on the Weston-super-Mare seafront. Dawn is looking forward to going out to festivals and just freedom in general. Mo is looking forward to live music gigs. Ian is looking forward to just walking in the western sun. And Dean says he cannot wait to get to St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands. So there's a nice wide range of things that people are looking forward to doing. And actually, even me just reading those out has given me a nice warm feeling as I think about sunshine and seeing people and doing things. I think it would be useful just to keep that in mind. What is it that you want to be doing when we get out of this situation? And that hopefully that beacon of light that you set out for yourself will keep you going through these, as you say, Michelle, times when we're feeling a bit out of sorts, maybe just put a Post-it note up of the thing that you're going to do or the things that you're going to do. I think that will keep people going. And we will get out of this, as Michelle says. It's not a case of if, it's just when we can step things up to make it safe for us all to enjoy these wonderful things that we've just been talking about.
Couldn't agree more. And for those of you who don't know, Sarah has an also has a couple of law degrees as well, I should add, Michelle, but also is a qualified coach with the coaching by our friend Bev. And I'm very lucky to have her working alongside me every day, because it's a great start. We talk on Zoom every morning, planning for the day's work ahead, planning for this show, who's coming on next week. Talking of which, we're welcoming a certain gentleman called Graham Ash, who until quite recently was the managing director of Clark's UK and Europe, which is a hundreds of millions turnover company. And he's now working at Pneumatic, helping develop a new product for Henry the Hoover. So he'll be our guest next week. I just wanted to say, you talk about warm feelings. I've got a warm feeling. I learn something new every day from this show. That's why I love it so much, every week, in fact. Lindsay McKinstry has chimed in and said, I was in that movie as an extra, very proud. So we're talking about The Remains of a Day, which is this movie which is filmed in Michelle's hometown and a couple of bays along for myself and Sarah Brooks, called Weston-super-Mare. And that's a real little treat. So, Lindsay, I'd love to connect with you and find out more. I hope one day to run an event, and I've been talking to Michelle about that in years gone by, celebrating the movie and the book. And also, it'd be lovely to find out your involvement in the Merchant Ivory movie, which won lots of Oscars, I should add. And I recommend viewing it if you're interested in Weston-super-Mare and seeing The Pier as well. So I'll stop using this as a platform for my movie passion. But Michelle, I just wanted to come back to you and to thank you so much for your time today. Sarah, it's a fond farewell for now. Thank you for moderating. Could you have a little heart coming from a hand in the corner of the screen for Sarah Brooks, please, for all this hard work she's doing for businesses and the Evo network. Thank you. Goodbye, Sarah Brooks. And Michelle, it's just us two standing now. So to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, Professional Apprenticeships. They are sponsoring all of season 4. If you are watching and you'd like to sponsor season 5, or I beg your pardon, that's already sponsored by our friends at Western College, I should add. Season 6 and season 7, we're planning ahead. It's a really good way to promote your business. We'll do lots and lots of promotion along the way. But also, if you've taken value from today and you're watching on our new YouTube, which is primarily an archive system for us at the moment, then please do subscribe, like, and activate that bell, as they say, if you've got value from today. And if you're on LinkedIn and we're not connected, please do connect with me. There are 764 million active accounts on LinkedIn around the world. It's the world's biggest website, don't you know? And we, i.e. Muggins here, are just one of 2,500, and I know that for a fact, who've been accredited to stream live on the network. And that will go up again by a few thousand, no doubt. But we're very grateful to LinkedIn, to both Alana Smith, particularly in New York, head of LinkedIn Live, who I'm chatting away with every few weeks, and we've been piloting some features with. So thank you very much indeed to Alana, if you're watching, Richard in Dublin, and the team in India as well at events. So last but by no means least, a huge thank you to our special guest today, Michelle Micheal MBE. I wanted to ask you about what it's like to receive the MBE, but maybe that's another conversation for maybe the 4th time we get a chance to chat. But for everyone watching, please do give us a heart or the hand with a light to say thank you to our special guest, Michelle. Thank you for keeping our spirits high. Thank you for giving the no-nonsense practical advice as a leader of leaders. And we wish you, and of course, most importantly, your family and your customers, a very, very successful 2021. And, you know, not long to go now, I'm sure. So, Michelle, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, you have been watching The Biz Live. Next week, it's Graham Ash, the former managing director of Clark's UK and Europe, one of the UK's most famous brands, huge exporter. He's doing great things. And he also has a huge amount of knowledge to share with you. We'll be talking about business and the rag trade, which is, of course, clothing and shoes. Enjoy. We will see you soon. Michelle, thank you. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk again soon. And thank you, everyone. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.